for joining today's See Me series as we celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month. Thank you to our three fabulous panelists that you'll meet today. And also thank you to our moderator, Rhonda Denotter. Rhonda is the Tax Managing Director at KPMG and committee member of the COCPA DE&I Committee. Without further ado, let's get started. Rhonda, please take it away.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Stacy covered a couple of my quick little things there on welcoming everyone to the October installment of our See Me series. I'm really excited to be here. As Stacy said, I am part of KPMG in our tax profession. I specialize in real estate and private equity. I'm really excited to be here with our panelists. So a quick rundown of how this session is going to go. We'll do some introductions of our panelists. It will go in alphabetical order, so there's no preference in our individuals here, but go in alphabetical order. We'll have them share their stories, and depending on the flow of conversation, I may interject a question or two at that time, or we may wait till the end. We'll just see how the flow goes. And most important is to allow each of them the opportunity to share their story. So I am a first-time panel or facilitator, moderator of a panel. So bear with me. I do have on my other screen here the chat. So if you have any questions that you'd like to ask our panelists, please don't hesitate to put a question in the chat and we'll do our best to cover off on that. So here we go. Today we have Sheila Herrera. She is a CPA in public practice. She's been here in practice for almost 20 years in the not-for-profit sector. She's experienced in foundation, research entities, and social service. Most of Sheila's experience relates to audits covering government accounting standards, the Single Audit Act, as well as the Federal Acquisition Regulation. Sheila is a partner at Moss Adams, and she's also a technical reviewer for federal compliance audits. She trains individuals on accounting and audit topics and also serves as a career advisor and mentor to several. Sheila, welcome. We're excited to hear your story today and how you have leveraged off of your background, your family as a mom of three, as a wonderful wife, and how that has contributed to your success in the accounting profession. So we're excited to have you here today. Next on our panel today, we'd like to welcome Gabriel Quesada. Gabriel is a Colorado native, me too. There's a few of us, so that's a rarity out there. He's also a first-generation American. So Gabriel, congratulations on your most recent promotion to manager. Gabriel is a manager at EY. He serves in the Global Compliance and Reporting Service line. In addition to that, Gabriel is a founding executive board member of the EY Denver Latino Professional Network. Hoping to hear more about Gabriel's fondness for motorcycles and just how his observations of family and just like your profession, being a first American generation. So we're really excited to hear your story. And last but certainly not least, a fellow DEI committee member, Fernando Varela. Fernando was raised with his Mexican family from Southern Texas, first-generation college graduate, obtaining both his undergrad and master's degrees. Fernando is with BDO, and he started an audit and has recently transitioned over to the Transaction Advisory Group, where he's now a manager. As you all can see from his bio, Fernando is living up to all things Colorado. Fernando loves trail running, hiking for teeners, and just exploring all of our various outdoor sports. So we're excited to hear your story, Fernando, and just really how your upbringing has contributed to your success in the accounting community, excuse me. So without further ado, Sheila, I welcome you to share your story.
Thank you, Rhonda, and thank you all again for including me as part of this series. I really do appreciate you all letting me tell my story and share a few things here. I was born and raised in a small, highly populated Hispanic town with a high school that was definitely in a lower income, crime-driven community. People still tell me, like, how did you grow up in that town? For me, I had my head down. I was focused on school. I stayed out of trouble. I was the valedictorian of my class. And so from there, I jumped straight to, college. I certainly didn't start college thinking I was going to become an accounting major. My mom was an accounting major and worked for the Los Alamos National Laboratory for her whole career, either in an accounting role or as an auditor. I planned to be an engineer and had no really desire to follow in my mom's footsteps. I saw, how hard she worked and saw that every closing month she would have to work the weekend. And really, I saw the politics involved as part of the job. And I really didn't want any part of that. I ended up getting a job during high school with a family CPA, kind of part-time in my hometown. At that point, started learning some bookkeeping, learning some debits and credits while, going to college for my engineering degree. And so kind of made it into year 2 of college. And I slowly realized I was just exhausted from all the difficult math and the science that it was requiring to complete my engineering degree. I completed through differential equations and Chem 3. I kind of decided to make a change at that point and said, well, I'm doing this bookkeeping thing. I'm actually kind of good at it. I'm understanding how to process transactions from day to day. I kind of have been helping work a company through their audit process that they had to get through on their financial statement audit. So I got to see a little bit of that world. So I knew some basic things. So I was like, well, why not try and learn some more about accounting? So I decided at that point I was going to take some accounting classes and got into accounting 1, and then took an interesting fraud class along the way. And that really, for me at least, solidified, this is where I want to be. This is where I need to be. And so I eventually decided that I wanted to not be traveling back and forth to my hometown for work, and really started to try to find a career where I was living. And so I met with a Robert Half recruiter at the time, interviewed with Moss Adams, and started literally a few days later. I knew nothing about public accounting when I started, hadn't heard of the firm, hadn't been part of any kind of university clubs. I was working to make sure that when I got out of college, I didn't have any debt at the end of the day. So I hadn't participated in campus recruiting at all. Did not go through interview process, and really had no impression, good or bad, of what public accounting was. And so I started off as an auditor, auditing these big state governments and auditing a lot of these federal funds, which was truly eye-opening to see how these big governmental entities worked. As our firm had grown, I had the opportunity to work on so many different types of things. I mean, I love that every day is a challenge. Every day I get to learn something different. Some days I start my day with a goal in mind, and at the end of the day, I usually reflect and think, okay, today was really successful. And then there's some days where I'm like, oh my goodness, I have this huge, big to-do list. And these are the things that either myself or my team need to focus on as part of the challenge for the next day or weeks or whatever that is to come. And so I think, being in public accounting, there is this perception out there that you're expected to know everything. And I think that's far from the truth. Thank goodness that I have the most amazing team within Moss Adams here, that if I don't know something, there's likely someone in the firm that does. And so I can pick up the phone and call, someone at any point, and we can help work through a client problem or an internal problem or an accounting issue or that type of thing. I think one of the most surprising things that if someone told me when I started public accounting, my career here, that I would be a leader, I probably wouldn't have not understood what that meant. And so as a staff, you really become immersed in just doing what you're told at the end of the day. You're going through the motions of learning, you're trying to figure things out. And then as your career evolves, I really realized that applying what I know and sharing that knowledge with staff and clients, it was satisfying to know that I could add some value somewhere at the end of the day. And so through that time, you kind of learn what works well, what doesn't. I have my own kind of leadership style. We've been talking a little bit more internally about what, everyone's leadership styles are and their learning style. And it's kind of interesting to start working through that and really being a leader and learning, what communication is and being a team member and all those things that you don't really think of when you think of accounting. And so I get to wear a lot of different hats within the firm, and I often get asked, how do you manage all of my kind of work responsibilities? And, I have a lot of home responsibilities as well. And so I'm a wife of a veteran. I'm a mom of 3 kids, and so they all have, their own things going on. My kids are sometimes perplexed, with what I do, and there are some days that I can't really describe it to them what I do. But they're very aware that, I work really hard, and they know that, every day may be different. And within Moss Adams, even since I started from day one, I have had the flexibility to adjust my schedule whenever I need, even, pre-COVID. My husband was deployed at some point, and so I was a single mom, and so I didn't have to travel. And the firm was very willing to work with me and my schedule. I worked from home some days. If there's been a school event, I have absolutely been there for those types of things. I really, make sure that my schedule matches all of their things so that I can be there for those things. I really don't like missing holidays, birthdays, whatever it is, you name it, I am there for. And so I've been, very fortunate to have the support system behind me, both with our clients, with our teams, with the firm. And I can do those things. And if there's something that pops up along the way, there's people that can help support me in that regard. I've had all 3 kids while I've been here at Moss Adams. And so twice, 2 of them came during busy season. And so you can all imagine what that feels like. But you do have that ability to just completely disconnect. And so the firm did allow me to do that during that time, which was truly amazing. And so I am busy all year, but I do try to make sure that I take the kids on vacation and really show my teams and my family that I can successfully, do both things and feel like I am making, I'm being successful at the end of the day. I am really proud to be a partner within Moss Adams, and I'm proud to show the firm and everyone that I work with that I am an Hispanic partner within Moss Adams.
That's an awesome story, Sheila. I too found that engineering was the pathway to accounting. So I studied aerospace engineering before I made it and Crossline. I only did 1 year, but I made it through Calc 3, not DiffyQ. But congratulations on all of that. I would be curious if you could share for our folks here how when you functioned as a single mom as well as dual working spouse, but what sort of advice do you give for how to have your mom role and setting those boundaries? How do you do that for your teams?
Yeah, I think learning, flexibility is not always look the same from day to day sometimes. And so you have weeks where I leave, the office at 4:30 so I can make dinner every day, or they have practices that I have to be at, right? That I have to take them to. Or there's some weeks where I have to be at a client. And so, making sure that the schedule is very clear with my spouse that, hey, I need your help this week, or whatever that is, or maybe it's my mother-in-law that helps that week. And so, that is really important as, just making sure that everyone is communicating throughout the process, even, in my household, just to make sure that, we are being successful.
Great. Gabriel, let's switch over to you and hear a little bit about your story.
Course. Thank you for having me. Um, my name is Gabriel Quesada, and I am a Colorado native. And I was actually born in Boulder, Colorado. And at the time I was born, my parents were students at the university. And so I actually grew up in student housing for the first 6 years of my life on campus. And my parents had met while studying abroad, doing their undergrad in Costa Rica, and came back to the States and got married and had my brother and I. And so we definitely are very, very big Buff fans over here. Um, the uh, the story actually really does start with my parents. My father came to the United States from Zacatecas, Mexico, He came as a child to join my grandfather, who had already been here on the Baseto program, so was able to receive sponsorship to gain his citizenship and brought his family. And so that's played a really important role in my upbringing. I spent a lot of time with my abuelos, and I always say there's nobody who will love me as much as they did. They're such warm, loving people, and so much culture, and just love the time that I spent with them. And after my parents graduated, they were actually pursuing their degrees in education, and they both became teachers. They both specialized in ESL, so English for second language learners, and they would during the day they would teach ESL to students, but they would also volunteer in the evenings at adult education and often teach those students' parents English. So they became very well known in the community in which we lived at the time. We moved from Boulder to Longmont and spent some time in Westminster as well. So they had a huge impact on my journey and my story as educators. It was just a really big deal to them. They were first generation college students themselves and just really believed in it. So they really strongly encouraged my brother and I to go to college. And that's what we did. After I graduated from Boulder High School, I went on to Front Range Community College. No idea what I was doing. I was just like, go to college, and listening to that, but eventually found my way. And I kind of knew business was where my interest was. I just wasn't too sure kind of what specific discipline I would really want to specialize in. And it was actually my grandmother on my maternal side. She was an accountant, and so she advised and said, "Hey, try an accounting class." So I took Accounting 101, and on the first day, I'll never forget that the way my professor described accounting was as the language of business, and that stuck with me because I was already very much interested in business, and I just knew at that moment that I wanted to be fluent in that language. So I stuck with it, and I took my accounting classes at Front Range, and I got my associates in business. And then I transferred to back to CU Boulder. Went home to CU, and I had worked really, really hard in community college just to get good grades and to graduate with honors. And so I was super disappointed when I learned my GPA didn't transfer with me. So I had to start all over, and that kind of made me ineligible for any sort of like scholarships and like I guess merit aid. So I worked really hard my first semester, and after that, I was fortunate enough to become a Hummel Family Scholar, and I received a full ride through my time at CU through my master's, and I'm so grateful to that family and the organization. There's also other scholarships that I received, so it made it possible for me to quit my job at the Mexican restaurant I worked at as a server and focus full time on school. And I did some internships and leadership programs while there at CU, and ultimately accepted an offer from EY. I did get my master's in tax, and so the opportunity that I had was to start in the tax practice in Denver at EY. And in 2019, I started as a staff there. Another important piece that I left out there from my time at CU was meeting someone that would become a mentor that was heavily involved in the recruiting and just overall, I guess, community involvement was Diego Baca, who is now a partner at EY. And he was somebody that I saw myself in, and that I was able to relate to and see, hey, like he looks like me. Up until then, I hadn't seen very many Hispanic people in the recruiting and accounting field that I'd experienced. So meeting him really had a huge impact. So immediately after starting with the firm, I stayed in close contact, and he always invited me to get involved. And so as I started as a staff at EY, I also got involved in our college map program, which is our college access Mentor Access and Persistence Program. And I was a volunteer with them for 2 years. When we would go to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Early College and every week and give presentations on important things like financial aid and how to adult when you go to college, and these, really important things that aren't taught in class, but every kid has to face eventually. And after 2 years volunteering with that program, Diego is the executive sponsor. He nominated me to become the director of that program. So I led that program for a couple of years and really just loved that experience. Another piece that was mentioned, I was a part of the founding board for our Latino professional network. There hadn't been one established in our Denver office yet. So I was really, really proud and excited to be a part of starting that. So mind you, with all of my extracurricular activities, I also had something missing that was my CPA. So I had my tax work, I had my extracurriculars, but in 2022, I took a little bit of a step back from overextending myself, and I started, which I always recommend to all my mentees and new hires. Start it, guys. Don't wait. Do not wait. It'll only get harder. So I started that in 22, and I finished that. My last exam was this year, earlier this year. So in August, I got my license, and that was a really, really big deal for me, and so excited to kind of see it all come to fruition. And yeah, I guess that would be my academic and professional journey. Now I'm a manager in our global compliance and reporting practice, and I specialize mostly in financial services and real estate as well. I do have clients across many other industries, but those will be my main. Outside of work, I am an avid motorcyclist. My grandfather had motorcycles in Mexico and California. My dad is also an avid motorcyclist and off-road rider, and so I have continued that with them. It's one of my favorite activities that I actually get to go travel and do with my dad. We went to the sand dunes this year, and that was such a great experience to share with him and kind of see it come full circle. So I think that's really it.
Thank you, Gabriel. Gosh, other than like a 20-year difference in terms of the time of starting our careers, so many parallels there. My father was actually born in Zacatecas as well. He was one of 5 children, but the only one of the children that was born in Mexico when they moved up to Colorado. So all my family was, on my dad's side of the family, was in Pueblo, but he was the only one that was born in Mexico. I loved listening to the part about the language of business, and I'm curious if that experience you had with that professor and talking about that, and you shared this early on about your parents being ESL instructors to so many in the community in Boulder. And do you think maybe you can talk to maybe did those link up in terms of, your parents being educators and teaching English and then hearing this as language, and how that might be part of your experience?
Yeah, they were huge proponents, and I feel very grateful to have them to, I guess, guide and help me make some decisions in college. My dad was very adamant the whole time, apply for scholarships, and it's like I am. So he was definitely thrilled. But I guess just understanding that accounting is the core and at the foundation of every business was definitely huge, and kind of teaching that in my role with the college MAP program of helping students understand their finances and financial aid. That has been one of the things that I've really enjoyed, the opportunity to kind of teach myself and have those connections with students kind of just starting their journey, and give them what my parents gave me, which is understanding your finances and your checkbook and the language of business to be able to get through college. And so something that I'm happy that I get to be involved with and kind of carry on that they did.
Awesome. What's your favorite motorcycle?
Well, I have several. They all have names. My favorite one would probably be my road motorcycle. It's an MT-09. And her name's Rebel, and she's blue, and she's wonderful.
Awesome. Judy.
So Gabriel, I wanted to ask you because it just happens to be a coincidence that I had some friends that just came back from Costa Rica, and they were very surprised by the abject poverty in Costa Rica. Um, where they stayed was a very well-to-do area, but the minute they left that area, it was because Costa Rica is basically a third world country. And so I'm wondering if your parents' experience there um, influenced that idea that, you need to excel, you need to be educated, etc., and that they felt compelled to help the Costa Ricans advance as well, to help them um, help themselves to a better life.
I think education in like not just in Costa Rica, but them being first generation college students was a huge was the opportunity out of poverty. They both did not come from any sort of wealth and did live similar experiences. So that was their ticket, and that was how it was kind of led by example to us as, hey, like watching, because when we were born, I mean, we lived on student loans and in subsidized housing, and very humble beginnings, but to watch the progression from going from that living to having, their careers and their community involvement was definitely a huge piece of giving back and growing the youth. And my mom was she did ESL for younger students, and my dad was at high school, and he was a local legend. And with the high school students, and we couldn't ever go anywhere without somebody seeing us and stopping us to talk to my parents and be like, hey, remember me? And yeah, it's always heartwarming to see. So definitely giving back was a big part of it.
So, do you think that influences your desire to be a mentor, etc., to help others succeed as well?
Absolutely, as well as Diego, as well as being visible as a face for students to see that, hey, like someone who looks like me is doing what I've thought I wanted to do, and makes it feel that it's achievable and possible, has always been something that's really important to me as well.
Thank you, Gabriel. And Fernando, please.
Yes. Yeah, of
I'm
course.
excited to hear your story.
Well, first and foremost, I just want to say thank you for letting me be on this panel and share my story. Really appreciate that. And I try my best to keep it short and sweet so we have a good amount of time for questions at the end. And with that being said, as we touched on it earlier, I'm born and raised down in Texas, a little small town. And yes, that town has more than one stoplight, so it's not too small, still good size. Then came out of a Mexican family that just built on hard work and being around a community. But it's strange you guys mentioned as well. My family's also from Zacatecas, more specifically Rio Grande. It's just, I guess, a small world here in Colorado, but it's pretty interesting. So we might have to connect on that later and see if we're related. But overall, yeah, growing up in Texas was an awesome childhood, and Mexican family is very community driven, extremely hardworking. But there's those times where it's tough, but I want to say that that's in a good way. It really made you stretch how you see yourself, your family, and people. And for example, I know we all had that experience of being the kid translating at the cash register for your parents. It's always an interesting experience seeing it now at grocery stores, things like that. You're like, well, I was there once before too. So it's pretty awesome to see that even years back, it's still going on. And in terms of high school, I would say, a pretty normal student. I wasn't a super A+ student, but I also wasn't, a D student or anything like that. I focused on getting my work done, playing sports, and being very engaged with a group of friends, and something I always enjoyed. And once it came to college, senior year of high school around that time, I honestly had no idea college was an option. I had no idea how I was going to pay for it. No one in my family has ever gone to it or even asked those questions. So for me, the only expectation was to graduate high school and then maybe get a decent job here and there. But I knew I wanted to do more. And yeah, I talked to my parents and said, hey, we don't have the answers, but we can help you figure out what's going on. And I really had to go deep into research mode within high school, but also just Google looking up things, how to do FAFSA applications, tuition, what it all means. I had literally no idea. And in doing that, I was able to apply for a lot of scholarships, ended up getting a full ride academic scholarship to my local college. And I had ideas of going out of state, going here and there, but I knew deep down that there's no way I was going to pass that up. And a thing that always I like to tell, not necessarily tell, but that's really close to me is in high school, right before I went to college, I asked my dad, like, hey, if you buy me this laptop, I'm never gonna ask money from you again, just as a kid, and promise that I'm gonna try really hard to go to college. And ever since I've been keeping that promise. If anything, it's been the other way around now. But yeah, it's just something interesting where they really helped me out at the beginning and just kept my promise to them, which I really enjoyed. And then once I got that scholarship, got into college, become first generation, I decided to join accounting because I had a couple of friends that I in previous years played soccer with, and I said, hey, it sounds good. It's a steady career. You're going to get a job, things like that. And then once I got into college, I started to join accounting organizations and be a part of the classes. And then also to touch back on what Gabriel said, where once you get the idea that accounting is the language of business, it makes sense to be a part of it. Everything we do, everything we look at, it has gone through a business. And if you know the language behind it, then you're going to be very versatile and very useful in the workforce. And I always thought that was good for longevity. So I went all in into it and then graduated in fall 2019 with a master's and then an undergrad the year before that. And before I graduated, I interned at a national bank, but then also at BDO, my current firm. And I started in audit right after college. So fall 2019, I started in the audit department in BDO Houston, and then COVID happened. And so within those, I want to say 8 months after graduating, I got my CPA. And then to touch back on what Gabriel said, I 1000% agree. Get it done immediately if you can. Not even if you can, you're gonna can somehow. Definitely get it done really fast. And then once that happened, I became a senior in audit after that. And then my firm bought out a couple of firms in Denver, and I knew that I always wanted to live in Colorado and that aspect of lifestyle. I really enjoy it. I just had no idea of how to do that until my firm bought a couple of firms out here, and I volunteered to be one of those people that integrate that company into our company. And in doing so, it was a good process. Went over here, and then once that was done, I essentially told them like, hey, I want to stay here. Can we work something out? And they were willing to work with me and really get things together, and I really appreciated that and moved to Denver. Then after a year in Denver with an audit, I moved over to transaction advisory, which is more of the mergers and acquisitions world. And I think that really has opened my eyes into more ways accounting is used, because I knew deep down it goes everywhere, but in terms of how you use it, I found it interesting getting to see from the ground up how companies work, getting to talk to executives that are founder owners and having those candid conversations with them of how they built their company, what do they do now, what are they looking forward to. And that's something that I didn't think I would be exposed to until 20, 30 years into my career, when it's only been 5, and you have that exposure and the ability to talk at not just the exec level, but let's say a staff accountant, and really understand that language. And now where I find the most value in my day to day is being able to turn numbers into words, but words into number, and explain that to a group of people so that everyone's on the same page. And that's what I really enjoy nowadays in terms of my career. And then now in terms of outside of my career, I enjoy all the Colorado things. As it was mentioned earlier, I enjoy hiking 14ers, trail running, snowboarding. And it's funny because I didn't see snow till I was 21. So that was pretty interesting for me being out of Texas. And now I'm an okay snowboarder. But around all of that, I also do enjoy giving back to the community, and especially the Hispanic community is something that I'm always going to try to do and always push for. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell in terms of history and career and everything else. But I'm open to see if there's any more questions, and definitely willing to answer.
Thank you, Fernando.
Mhm.
Definitely a small world on this whole Zacatecas.
Yeah.
We'll have to bring that together here sometime. You know, I listened to each of your stories. I spent a lot of time. I started my profession back in 1997. Um, there were, I mean, you could kind of see, you know, some maybe 60-40 in terms of male and female in the accounting profession. But certainly no one looked like me. No one had the same sort of background as me. I spent a lot of time trying to pursue my career and not leverage off of, I didn't want to talk to the fact that I was female. I didn't want to bring a lot about my Latino upbringing. And I sit on this panel with a lot of pride listening to each of you speak of your stories and share about your histories and your family. Over time, I've reflected a lot about what I learned growing up. And one thing that shines from each of your stories is the community. And I think that goes so much to our families. We come from larger families, even if it's not necessarily sibling driven, right? Our aunts, our uncles, our ninos, our ninas, our abuelos, they're always with us and they're always teaching us. And they teach us to share, they teach us to give. I think now a lot about like for KPMG, we have our Embark Scholars program, and that's where we're going into the younger students in college, right? And reaching out to them. The profession as a whole is looking to not necessarily receiving, that 5-year program. I'd like each of you maybe to share a little bit about, what it is that speaks to you from giving back to the community, and what's been a big driver in that. Fernando, maybe we'll start with you as our most recent speaker.
Yeah, I definitely not say just as an example here. So I like to volunteer at this organization called Food for Thought, where every Friday we get together and put meals together for kids in underserved communities. So the reason behind that is because in school, those kids would receive free meals, subsidized mealing, but once they go home on the weekends, they don't have that. So it's very tough. And our goal there is to just help them out, bridge that gap of the weekend before they come to school. And in doing that, as a kid, there was a lot of times where us as a family would go to food drives, things like that, to try to get more food, see what we can get. And I didn't really think about it back then of all the time and effort and who puts these together, things like that. And then now having the ability to do that, I always tell myself I don't have crazy amounts of money or anything like that, but I do have time, and I can definitely give that when I can, and I always try to. And that's where you can like what you're doing actually affects someone that day, affects a family, affects a kid. And that's what I find benefit in, and just knowing that what you're doing is going to help someone. And you're not going to see when the kid gets food, but deep down that's going to someone that's going to nourish them and help them. And hopefully down the road, they're able to see that message reflect again, where when they give back to the community, it goes full circle. And just having that mindset of, I know it might not be a lot to in the grand scheme of things, but to one kid, one family, that's the world to them. And I really do appreciate that aspect of just helping out the community and being involved.
Awesome, Fernando. Sheila, maybe you could share with the group about like your community involvement or the spirit that you have and how you share that with, your family.
Yeah, I feel like as I've kind of moved up in my role, the time that I have is limited for sure on, what that looks like for helping as far as community service. But I do feel like there's been a lot of things over time where I've been able to participate in. And some of that has been, things like we've done, been able to, we send food home on the weekend for kids, that maybe don't have a meal that they can have during the weekend with their families, or We've done like daffodil days with the hospital where they sell, flowers to raise money and that type of thing. But I do always look at it as a great thing when I am able to participate in, a community event, and some of these come at random times during the year. And I think being able to take a step back, as an accountant and contribute to whatever event it is super rewarding. And it's nice to hear everyone's story as far as, what are you doing? But I do think there's things in there that everyone can, contribute in some way.
100%, Sheila. Thank you for what you've done for our community. And Gabrielle.
Yes, definitely what comes to mind is the College Map program and we work primarily with underprivileged and underrepresented students and minority students. And it's in addition to the presentations and education, we also are really fortunate to raise scholarships and give scholarships to those students. And another piece is every kid gets a laptop to take with them to school. One of the best things is have students reach out on LinkedIn and provide an update. That is like some of the most rewarding way it kind of comes back and you see what kind of impact you've had. Other things as well as right now very involved in getting the community out to vote and doing a lot of voter outreach. That's something that my family is also very, very passionate about. So that is current, very current.
Yes. I thank all three of you for your time today and sharing your stories, being vulnerable with this group, being vulnerable with our community about what you've experienced, and really just like the growth opportunity that we all have together today, hearing each other, celebrating what we've experienced. Oh, Jim, we've got a question.
Thanks, Rhonda. Yeah, I'd echo that. Really appreciate hearing all of your stories. It's just really interesting and inspiring, and I commend all of you for everything you've done in your careers. I wanted to see if you could talk a little bit about. I know Gabriel mentioned I think it's the Latino Professional Network was the name, and I know all the firms have the business resource groups at Moss Adams, or different names. If you could talk about the impact of those groups, what you think you get out of it personally, and what you think it adds to the firm to have those resources.
We'll start with maybe Sheila.
Thank you. Yeah. So we do have business resource groups within Moss Adams. And so I've been lucky to be part of both what we call the Forum W resource group. It's for women, and also the Latinx group. And so as part of those, they've kind of morphed and changed over time, but some of the messaging has been very much the same, over the time period that I've been part of it. And it's really, the goal is to help each other. And do exactly this, tell our stories, and how do we learn from each other, and how do we push each other to be more successful. And sometimes it's as easy as you're doing a great job doing these things and you don't have to feel bad about it or guilty about it, and all those things that kind of come with public accounting. But I do think, from me being in Forum W for a very long time, I've got to see and have some really great mentorships as well along the way. And it's really helped me at least grow as a person, I feel like. And without these groups, I don't think I could be here today.
Gabriel?
Yeah, I would echo that and say just a sense of belonging is one of the biggest things I get from it as well. The mentorship is, I have to mention too, I felt enormous support from everybody to pursue my CPA and sit for my exams. But it's not just the LPN either. It's all of our affinity networks that we get to interact with and collaborate with. So we have several different professional networks that we all come together and have specific events and really just creates an entire whole other sub community that makes you feel makes you feel connected and just a part of something. And there's fun things too, like playing La Loteria, and connecting with people over salsa and like salsa dancing classes. So there's so many different things outside of just taxes and audit that we get to connect with each other on, as well as our professional aspects too.
Thank you. And Fernando.
Yeah, I definitely share the shared sentiment here at Video. I'm part of their DE&I council, where we try our best to host monthly events when it comes to multiple different cultures. And this past month, for example, was current month as well, Hispanic Heritage Month, and I hosted an event for the entire office where we put a loteria. We also talked about the history of it. We introduced foods from different regions and just had a great day to enjoy the culture and really get to know people. And I think it also currently, in my opinion, just plays a bigger role in bringing people back into the office, getting to see face to face and really who are you working with. And just might have been a lot of changes at firms where new people started or people have left, but it just get to see people come in and at the same time merge that with culture and community and bring people together. And I always think that's definitely something beneficial that I see in doing those events and culture driven events.
And I'll just share as well. I mean, KPMG has a variety of business resource groups. And what I have found in the last 2 years, really, the sense of community, talking about things that are different, celebrating the items that are, kind of consistent across things, creating that space for people to be together and share ideas. It's just part of what I think is really valuable. I spent a lot of my career pushing hard and trying to, work through the tax technical piece, and working on those sorts of items. And I'm finding in this kind of, we'll call it my elder stage of my career, just the importance of what that community is, of making space in my office for people to talk and share, to hear what I have to say, to hear about my experiences. And I have an ability to, create those conversations and keep those conversations going amongst several. And I just think it's just really important to have that. I think it's important in bringing people together, sharing ideas, and just, creating the culture that makes where I work a really great place for me, and what sounds like what's a really great place for each and all of you. Yes, Judy.
So I have to ask, when you have these belonging events, do you engage people who are not part of your communities? And I kind of compare it to like the LGBTQIA plus community, where they have allies. So I think it would, and this is just my opinion, it would be good to engage, and I use the term loosely, outsiders to understand your culture and what's important to you. To, I don't want to say have them belong, but to understand.
Gabriel, you're nodding. I'll let
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
kind
I'll
of.
actually, it's across all of our professional networks, and it's heavily supported and encouraged. I think that, being a part of the LPN, we're also involved with our Black Professional Network, Pan Asian Women's Professional Network, and we go, there's shared events, our Pride group as well. Like, we're all involved in those in each other's events and worlds, being a part of the Affinity Network. And so being an ally is it's huge, and some really awesome connections that I've made are with allies to our groups and being allies to other groups. So it's a huge thing, and it's really important that we welcome that and make sure everybody feels that how important that is. Like, you don't have to be a part of that specific group to be a part of the professional network. The allies are just as important as members.
I think that's great because oftentimes when I see events like that, I always wonder, am I allowed to go? Will I feel like an outsider? Will people look at me and go, oh, what is Judy doing here? She's not um, a person of color or whatever the case may be. So that's great to hear because I think it really is important to have everybody feel welcome to any of those activities. So that's fantastic.
Fernando or Sheila, do either of you have anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I definitely share the same sentiment where if someone's willing to come and learn information and just be a part of the group, then they're more than welcome. We definitely always try to bring people together, and at the end of the day, I believe that's the goal.
I think, Fernando, it's kind of important too for members of that group to say, hey, Judy, we're having a XYZ picnic or whatever the case may be, salsa dancing lessons. Why don't you come join us? I know you like to dance, which I don't because I have two left feet, but I think you'd have a great time. So it's never a question for me as to whether I'm welcome or not. And to have somebody I know invite me, then I feel much better about it. So just Judy's points, which might be worthless, but
Not worthless at all. I mean, Sheila, you talked about the Forum W and your Latin American business resource groups. Maybe you can share with Judy ways that those groups, as well as how with at Moss Adams, you're opening the doors for inclusion of all.
Yeah, I think we've been very vocal about that for a long time. And, we've tried to include everyone and even the regular monthly meetings and the events. And we do, try to send out all the calendar invites to everyone so that they do feel included. We have kind of a monthly newsletter that goes out that kind of describes here's all the things that are kind of happening within each of the groups so that people really start to maybe engage a little bit. And it's nice to see, okay, these groups are doing these things and I can join, as I have availability or that type of thing. And so I think to Judy's point of like being asked to, be part of something, I think there are some groups that are very great at that. Because they are just a little bit more vocal about it. And I think there are groups where I think they're still learning kind of how to do that. But I think the messaging though within the firm is still the same.
Yeah, and I think those things all build upon each other, right? Like the more you see that, or you see what works for one way of bringing people together, we can leverage off of that. So it's great to hear. I think each of our firms has different ways of going about it, but I'm really excited about the growth in terms of what we see for our DEI community and how that just fosters just a really a sense of culture and a sense of belonging at each of our respective places of business. Stacy was saying as we were visiting before that we opened this up to the larger group. Our 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 installment here today, we're celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month, has been something that's been in the works for a while, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to have been a panel moderator today, learning about each and every one of you. And I think our guests that have been here today, we are kind of running short on time, so I wanted to just take a moment here to say thank you on behalf of the society for participating in our panel. For our guests, thank you for being here, for taking the time and creating the space in your day for listening to these stories. Cool little walk away. I'm definitely going to be pinging everyone. We'll start up a Zacatecas family club here soon for this society. Not really, just kidding. But anyway, thank you. We do have some upcoming events that I do want to highlight. So number one, for anyone that is curious of some of our past events that we've hosted, our See Me series, you can go to the society page and you can look to our DEI sort of group. We have past events that have been recorded, and those are available for you to listen. In December, we have our See Me series coming up. It is, mark it on your calendars, December 18. We look at this as a culmination of our See Me series and really celebrating our community and all of the things that the society has been able to do with this event. It really is about seeing us as individuals, as we've connected together. And then also want to highlight that November 6th will be our big event where we are celebrating CPAs who make a difference. It's really awesome. We're honoring our women leaders. We're celebrating heroes. I think this is also our event where we welcome our newly anointed CPAs. It's so cool to see people that have received that and be able to honor them. So we're excited about that, and just wanted to highlight for you and those that are within your community as you're visiting with your friends. We do keep our doors open for our DEI community here at the society. So we welcome people to come in and be committee members. So you can reach out on the page or talk with Stacy, and we'd love to have you be part of our community. Thank you.